Okay, the subcommittee will come to order. Welcome, everyone. Acting Secretary Cao, Admiral Caudle, General Smith, welcome. I want to start by acknowledging the men and women of the U.S. Navy and Marine Corps. They continue to meet lengthy deployments, a high operational tempo, and evolving threats with professionalism, determination, and bravery that are a credit to the entire force. You know as well as anyone how the operational capacity of the fleet, the production capacity of the industrial base, and the depth of our magazines are being severely tested today. You know how little room for mistakes there is in the training, readiness, and deployment of the world's greatest fighting force. So I must tell you, the way the President's request is structured, particularly in accounts that matter a great deal to the Department of the Navy, is a mistake. And unfortunately, it's not a new one. Last year, the ink was barely dry on the one-time reconciliation investment in shipbuilding when this subcommittee began to hear from uniformed leaders about budget discrepancies, shortfalls, and broken glass in major accounts. Actually, this is not a surprise. It was the avoidable consequence of treating one-time infusions of cash like a substitute for a full-year budget spending. This is not a mistake worth repeating. But the way OMB has structured your budget suggests the administration is willing to run even more significant risk in fiscal 27. Take munitions. Last year, the subcommittee fully funded one of the Navy's top unfunded priorities, accelerated development of the Maze cruise missile. This year, the budget request would put funds for procuring these new munitions not in sustainable annual appropriations, but in a one-time reconciliation slug. Likewise, the budget request strangely splits funding of multi-year procurement contracts for key Navy munitions between annual appropriations and one-time reconciliation. So, gentlemen, the entire premise of multi-year procurement is consistent yearly appropriations. It's right there in the name, how the department expects to send a consistent and reliable demand signal to industry with one-off reconciliation cash is beyond me. Maybe you can explain. To be clear, I'm glad to see basic things like ship operations appropriately built into the fiscal 27 base. The same goes for sustainment of the F-35, even belatedly. It's good to see this critical platform's operational readiness given high priority. But requesting new procurement for this aircraft in one-time reconciliation spending is just an unnecessary risk. Also, on top of aviation, I hope you have the good news on FAXX. We've seen more than a year's worth of delays and $250 million wasted on contract extensions for FAXX. Our adversaries have American air superiority in their crosshairs. The longer we delay these investments, the more our edge is blunted. So, Admiral Caudle, I know you've been outspoken on the important, quote, workhouse, horse, end quote, role that destroyers play in today's surface fleet. So I'll also need to hear you square this request failure to include a second DGG with the continued high demand for their capabilities. Gentlemen, on another topic we'll need to hear from you on is the lessons you're taking from the current conflicts and how they inform your thinking about the Navy and Marine Corps modernization. In recent months, Iran has extracted a price, effectively striking U.S. and partner military targets all across the region. We've also continued to use execute interceptors to take down these cheap drones. Why haven't we adapted more quickly to the modern battlefield? 2 weeks ago, Iran used small boats and drones against U.S. destroyers in the Strait of Hormuz, threatening these billion-dollar warships and the sailors who operate them. So what are we doing to increase protection while reducing the cost of defending these ships? Should we be using drone boats to add layers of protection for sailors? Or aren't we more prepared to use drones for counter-mine operations? Meanwhile, Ukraine continues to use drone vessels effectively against Russian access to the Black Sea. What happens if Iran learns these lessons before we do, or when China adopts them at scale? At the most basic level, what is the Department of the Navy doing to ensure that U.S. sailors and Marines benefit from every possible advantage of modern military technology? If you ask me, one of the obvious ways is to continue to invest in the alliances and partnerships that extend our reach and amplify our deterrent power. There's nothing to be gained from opting out of close engagement with battlefield experts like the Ukrainians and with capable and committed partners from the first island chain to NATO Eastern Front. So, Mr. Secretary, Admiral Caudle, General Smith, look forward to hearing your views on these and other topics. We'll turn to you momentarily after opening comments from Senator Coons.
Thank you, Chairman McConnell. Thank you all for your service and for being here. We have a number of issues to get through today. I agree with most of the points just made by the chairman, so I'll move to the things where perhaps I've got something to add. As we move into Memorial Day weekend, I also want to begin by expressing my undying gratitude to the sailors and Marines who've served and sacrificed and to whom we owe our freedom, and my general gratitude to the sailors and Marines currently serving in conflicts in the Persian Gulf, in the Southern Caribbean, and throughout the world. Without them, we would not be the nation that we are. So to Acting Secretary Cao, Admiral Caudle, General Smith, thank you for being here and for the forces that you lead. As a result of Operation Epic Fury, we're now deeply vulnerable in the Indo-Pacific, a theater home to three of our most threatening adversaries, the PRC, DPRK, and even Russia. We've redirected more than 2,000 Marines and at least one amphibious assault ship, the Tripoli from Japan, as well as the missile defense system from South Korea towards the Gulf. And in one striking illustration of Operation Epic Fury's drain on our readiness, we just need to take a moment and consider the USS Gerald R. Ford, having just returned from the longest operational deployment by a carrier group since the end of the Vietnam War, facing a slew of operational challenges. It'll now be out of action for up to 14 months as it undergoes repairs. Our heightened naval presence around Iran and ongoing naval deployments in the Eastern Pacific and Southern Caribbean around Venezuela begs the question, how long will our naval assets be deployed in these theaters, at what cost, and with what consequence for our deterrence in the East China Sea, South China Sea, and wider Indo-Pacific? I'm also gravely concerned by another abrupt firing of a senior Pentagon official during wartime, the former Secretary of the Navy, John Phelan. We have gotten no clear input or answers as to why that happened. There are, in other branches, other senior individuals who've been fired abruptly as well. More broadly, the topics I'm going to want to address in today's conversation is how to reform our shipbuilding enterprise, how do we proliferate autonomous systems, how do we rebuild our magazine depth, and how do we address your service's near-term operation and maintenance challenges. The department's fiscal 27 request is more than $286 billion in base funding for the Navy. I'm pleased to see more than $43 billion, a sizable percentage increase for the United States Marine Corps. But as the chairman commented, it relies on $38 billion in reconciliation funding, an uncertain and partisan process. And core examples include about half of your munitions request, all of the Marine Corps' medium landing ships, the submarine industrial base investments. Last year, the Navy would have halted sailing worldwide had this subcommittee not fixed the so-called broken glass, the reconciliation mistakes in our bill, and there was a similar challenge with the Marine Corps barracks modernization. We worked as best we could in a diligent bipartisan way to address that, but it was an unforced error. And this year's department request triples down on the potential risk here. So our experience was that the White House's decision created a host of problems last year, and I'm deeply concerned we're doing more to create those mistakes this year. So as a subcommittee, we need to clearly understand the nature and scope of the risks the administration is taking with your funding. As I mentioned, I'm concerned about readiness levels. The Navy, if I understand properly, is going to run out of ship operations funding in July because of unbudgeted operations in Southern Command and against Iran, as well as the rising price of fuel that impacts all of us. And there will be, as I mentioned, significant repair costs for the Ford and other ships. We don't have currently good estimates about what that will cost. Commandant General Smith, this committee's been very supportive of the Marine Corps' force design reforms. They were thoughtfully put together, executed efficiently, and better position Marines for modern combat. You consulted closely with Congress throughout all of this, so we understood your vision and how it would work, and I look forward to continuing to hear about how that work is playing out and how we can invest in your force readiness. I'm very pleased to see a strong investment in shipbuilding. I think we are far behind, and we need to catch up as best we possibly can. I'm proud to work closely with the Pennsylvania delegation in supporting the Philly Shipyard, one of a number of shipbuilding capabilities we need to invest in more. I support smart and robust investments in our industrial base, but that starts with expediting incorporating advanced manufacturing technologies. I think we need to learn from and partner with the best-in-class shipyards in the world, relatively few of which are in our country. The Navy is making steady incremental progress, but it lacks, in my view, the sense of urgency from our partners in shipbuilding. We need to understand real outcomes and metrics. We're putting a ton of money into industrial base, and we need to see how that money is reaching the sub-tier suppliers to broaden and strengthen that base. And then a clear understanding about what the government's responsible for and what industry is responsible for. I admire the Deputy Secretary's fierce determination to shake up elements of this system. Paying competitive wages, keeping the shipyard infrastructure in decent shape is industry's job, and they need to prioritize that over paying billions in stock buybacks, and I think collectively we need to hold them accountable. Last, there's a number of other areas of concern in this request, but I have to point to, you are requesting dramatic sums for a new class of battleship. In my view, the entire concept flies in the face of current naval doctrine. Everything we know about survivability in the current war space. You heard the chairman's comments about Ukraine and the remarkable success they've had against the Russian Black Sea Fleet. I will associate myself with those comments. You're requesting over a 5-year period, I believe, $50 billion. But as I understand it, you don't have a design, you don't know what's going to be on it, you're counting on multiple unproven technologies, and you don't know how you're going to build it. In my view, that's a program designed to fail. And we should instead be putting those funds in rapidly characterizing, acquiring, and deploying critically needed drones that will allow us below and on the surface and above the sea to be the dominant force we need to be going ahead. So we have a lot of ground to cover today. This is the start of our conversations for this appropriations year, and I am hopeful there will be an improvement from last year and that our information sharing will be transparent, thorough, and proactive. Thank you again for your service, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Coons. We'll ask each of you to make a brief statement, starting with you, Acting Secretary Cao.
Good morning, Chairman McConnell, Ranking Member Coons, distinguished members of the Senate Appropriations Committee. Senator Coons, thank you, sir, for reminding us on days like Memorial Day that freedom's not free. It's paid for by young men and women who will never see tomorrow. America's sailors and Marines are currently on the front lines of freedom in operations to protect our republic. Lincoln and Bush Carrier Strike Groups and Tripoli Amphibious Ready Group with the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit are in the Arabian Sea protecting merchant ships and stopping illicit shipping by a terrorist regime. Destroyers Arleigh Burke, Bulkley, Oscar Austin, and Gonzalez are protecting our allies in the Mediterranean against cruise missile attacks from Iran. In the Caribbean, Iwo Jima Argmu and USS Dwight D. Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group, a 49-year-old nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, are stopping narco-terrorists from poisoning Americans with illegal drugs. In the Pacific, Boxer Argmu and Destroyer Squadron 7 are enforcing the freedom of navigation in the South China Sea. At home, we're preparing Macon Island Argmu for a deployment. On our southern border, our sailors and Marines stand watch tonight, saying, "Nothing's going to hurt you tonight, not on my watch." 4 weeks ago, I was tasked by President Trump to lead the United States Navy and the United States Marine Corps. My three priorities are to take care of our sailors and Marines, build ships, and protect our homeland. 120 years ago, the Great White Fleet extended America's reach across the globe. We are currently at the forefront of history with a budget that will create the Golden Fleet, which renews that maritime dominance. We have the obligation to give our sailors and Marines the very best equipment to do their jobs. In our historic budget of $377.5 billion, we're adding 34 new ships, varying from small to large combatants, 123 new aircrafts, along with 5 unmanned ships. In 5 years, we will add 122 manned ships and 63 unmanned ships. We're funding the readiness of our fleet to 95%. We're procuring exquisite munitions that will keep our forces outside the weapons engagement zone while investing in research and development for the fight of the future. More importantly, we're increasing our service member pays, investing in family and unaccompanied housing, child development centers so that our sailors and Marines have a safe, clean, and comfortable place to live and not have to worry about their families when deployed in harm's way. We have greatly exceeded recruiting and retention goals, and that is due solely to the sheer leadership of President Trump and Secretary Hung Cao. 2 weeks ago, I was aboard USS Gerald R. Ford, USS Winston Churchill, and USS Bainbridge as they were returning from the 11-month combat deployment in 2 theaters. Do not believe the fake news that claims food shortages, backed up toilets, or low morale. What I witnessed were motivated and professional young Americans pushing the boundaries of performance for their country. It is imperative that we pass this budget. Ship construction and readiness were bill payers for Iraq and Afghanistan for 20 years. While our industrial base atrophied, America's peer competitors grew stronger and threatened our sovereignty. Their 100-year plan has one goal: total global domination. Only one thing stands in our way, and that is the United States of America. The Navy and Marine Corps are America's 911 force, capable of being anywhere as a carrier strike group or a Marine Air Ground Task Force with overwhelming firepower, as we saw in Absolute Resolve and Epic Fury. A year ago, I testified in my confirmation hearing that it would create the most lethal Navy and Marine Corps team the world has ever seen. I will keep that promise, having worn the cloth of our nation for 32 years, most of which was in combat. I also do this because I will not allow my oldest son, who will be commissioned as a second lieutenant in the United States Marine Corps tomorrow, to go through war the way I did, without the equipment that we needed. I will not allow this for any of America's sons or daughters. They signed a blank check to this nation, up to and including their lives, and we owe it to them to do our due diligence to fund a historic budget that will care for them and their families while giving them the tools they need to answer the call. I've seen firsthand what communism and authoritarian regimes have done to thriving nations. Members of my family were murdered by communists. In 1975, we had no flag to stand under or a country to call our own. But the United States gave us hope and a future. I've dedicated my entire adult life to defend this nation under God so that we would never see this, and our children and our grandchildren will never experience this ever. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify before you. I'm ready to answer your questions, sir.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Senator Kennedy.
Forgive me, Mr. Chairman, for interrupting. And I say this with respect for you and in these 3 gentlemen. But as you know, we've got a very important meeting at 11 o'clock. We're going to have to leave. I would respectfully ask if we could limit the opening remarks so we could get to ask a
Yeah,
few questions.
Senator Kennedy, Senator Coons has been perfectly all right with taking two on our side first, and then they get two. So we'll be able to get to both of you.
I know, but my point is, we're going to start at 11 o'clock. I've got to be there, and these gentlemen have some wonderful prepared statements, but I can read faster than they can talk. And I was hoping if they could give us the Cliff's Notes version, we might have enough time to ask you questions.
Or go ahead and ask the question.
Do you mind?
No.
You mind, gentlemen?
Sir, not at all.
All right. I'll try to be brief. Mr. Secretary, thank you for being here. We need more ships. We're going to give you money to build more ships. You need to get those ships built. You need to build as many of them as you can in Louisiana, but let's get them built. General, is Russia our friend?
Sir, they're not.
Between Ukraine and Russia, who do we want to win that war?
Well, we prefer there not be a war, but obviously,
Well, but there is. Who do we want to win?
obviously we want Ukraine to stand independently and not be consumed by Russia.
Okay. Now, when Putin went into Ukraine, he thought he was going to roll in and take it over in 2 days like thunder on a summer night, didn't he?
I believe he did.
But the Ukrainian people have fought back, haven't they?
Yes, sir. They have fought back.
And they now have some of the most sophisticated drone technology in the history of the world, don't they?
Sir, they do. They're doing very well with drones.
And they're giving, with the limited resources they have, they're giving Russia a curb stomping, aren't they?
I would say they are.
In fact, they have knocked out, with their limited resources, 40% of Russia's export ability of their oil. They, since January, using their drones and limited cruise missiles, they have hit oil and gas facilities within Russia over 100 times. Not on the border, within Russia, right?
Yes, sir.
And Putin was so scared, he almost had to cancel their military parade. Didn't he?
Well, I'm not sure of that, sir, but I will take your word for that, sir.
Okay. All right. Well, how much money? Now, let me just lead you. The world has $300 billion of frozen Russian assets in escrow, don't we?
I don't know, sir.
I do. It's $300 billion. And 2/3 of that, about $225 billion, is sitting in Europe, isn't it?
Again, sir, I'm not sure of that.
Well, I am. And I'm surprised, no disrespect, that you don't know. And Europe has asked our permission to take that $200 to $225 billion. Well, I mean, strike that. That $225 billion, humor me, that's sitting there frozen. Not a single penny is American taxpayer money, is it?
I don't believe it is.
No. It all belongs to Russia, doesn't it?
I believe that is correct.
And the
sir.
EU has asked our permission to take that money and give it to Ukraine so they can knock Russia in the next week and let's get this war over. That's a good idea, don't you think?
Well, I think anything that can be done to stop that war is a good idea, sir.
Would you support giving that $225 billion, no taxpayer money in America, to Ukraine?
Well, again, sir, that's outside my purview as a service chief.
Okay. Admiral, let me ask you a question. Would it be fair to say, based on his public and notorious comments, both before, during, and after the summit between President Xi and President Trump, that President Xi, how can I put this? He's nervous as a pregnant nun about what we're going to do on Taiwan, isn't he?
Sir, I do think he is concerned about our capability against any invasion of Taiwan.
I mean, talk about telegraphing your insecurities. I mean, he talked about it right out of the chute. He's practically sending us a television ad saying, I'm very worried about Taiwan. Now, we don't want a war with China, do we?
Absolutely not.
No. We want stability, though, with China, don't we?
Yes, sir.
And China doesn't recognize, President Xi doesn't recognize charity, does he?
I can't speak to that, but I would say probably not.
Well, he appreciates strength, doesn't he?
I would say so, yes.
If you're in a bar fight with President Xi and you start quoting Socrates like we did under President Biden, you're going to get your rear end whipped, aren't you?
That's probably not a good course of action.
Yes. Okay, so why don't we go ahead? Don't you think it'd be a good idea for us to gain leverage to make weapons sales to Taiwan right now?
Sir, again, these things are very complex and a full calculus of all the levers of power that are being negotiated and worked. So generally,
I'm sorry, what more do we have to know, Admiral? President Xi has telegraphed his anxiety, his insecurity, now that he knows that America has learned how to fight. We want leverage. We want stability, not a hot war. We want leverage. What's his insecurity? Taiwan. Why don't we just go ahead and sell the weapons to Taiwan that Taiwan wants? The president can call President Xi and say, hey, President Xi, don't take it personally. Don't get excited. Don't get your bowels in an uproar. But I'm selling these weapons. Why wouldn't we do that?
we definitely want Taiwan to be as strong as they can be, sir.
They'd be stronger with those weapons, though, wouldn't they?
Yes, sir.
Don't you think we ought to sell them?
Sir, I'm not going to get in front of the administration's overall calculus on that. That's just not I'm not going to make a statement on that as a service chief.
Okay.
But the capabilities that we're talking about would make them more effective.
I'm sorry to go over. I'm sorry. I just wanted to get my points in. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I've got to go, gentlemen. I'm really sorry. And I don't mean any disrespect by being so direct. But we're down to it. We're down to it.
Indicated there's a conference meeting, which I'm not going to myself, that a number of our side have to attend, and so I'll go next to Susan and then to John Hoban.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
If I may interject, what we're going to do is just skip you all's opening statements and go straight to the questions.
Thank you. In light of the briefing we have this morning, I want to thank my Democratic colleagues for also being accommodating. Secretary Cao, Secretary Hegseth just recently has described destroyers as being the backbone of the fleet. The fiscal year 27 budget request, however, includes funding for only one DDG 51 compared to 2 in fiscal year 26 and 3 in fiscal year 25. Such a reduction would send a troubling signal to the industrial base at a time when the Navy continues to emphasize the need for greater fleet capability and resiliency. Bath Iron Works in Maine, which is one of only 2 surface combatant shipyards in the country, has made real progress in workforce retention and accelerating production stability due to the steady demand signal. Based on the future year defense plan, how can we sustain the current production alone be sufficient to sustain both shipyards and the supplier base without restoring a stable 2 DDG per year procurements. And I would mention that when you start contrasting the size of our fleet with China's, it should be of great alarm to all of us. China now fields the Navy approaching 400 ships and is expanding its fleet at a pace that far exceeds ours. The U.S. Navy is down to 291 ships. That is very troubling to me, and to me, this is the last time that we should be cutting back on the workhorse of the fleet, the DDGs, which, by the way, also have proven themselves in recent conflicts. I remember a Bath-built ship shooting down every single missile that the Houthi terrorists were firing, and it just is something that I can't understand the budget recommendation on.
Chairwoman Collins, thank you so much for that question. And I share with you the love of the destroyers. They are the workhorse and the backbone of the United States Navy. Right now, we have 80 ships on contract and 59 in construction in Bath alone, which Bath creates amazing ships. Like you said, they've been in the forefront of this war and just doing amazing work there. In Bath alone, we have 11 destroyers on contract, 7 are in construction. We haven't even begun to cut metal for the other 4 yet. And so we're trying to allow the industrial base to catch up. And Senator, if you want to, I'll gladly go up to Bath with you to reassure the workforce that their work is valued, and we will add the ships in future years. It's just right now, I'm trying to give them the ability to catch up to the work as of right now, ma'am.
What happens, as you well know, that these ships take a long time to construct, although Bath is fast approaching a production rate of 1.5 ships a year. But what you create is a gap at the steel cutting stage, for example. If you don't have this steady throughput of ships, and that is my concern, and I would very much welcome your visit. General Smith, I want to commend the Marine Corps for its proactive approach to autonomous and unmanned capabilities as part of your broader modernization and force design. I'm encouraged by the decision to leverage existing Army investments in robotic combat vehicles and commercially available autonomy systems. Programs such as the M1 unmanned ground vehicle demonstrate a commitment to rapid experimentation in fielding emerging technologies. You're clearly exploring how these platforms can support logistics, reconnaissance, counter-UAS missions, and targeting, particularly in distributed Indo-Pacific operations. And we've learned a lot of lessons from Ukraine on how important autonomous and unmanned systems are in transforming the battlefield. So I am concerned that if we wait too long and have prolonged experimentation, prototyping, that's going to delay operational capacity while our adversaries are already integrating autonomous systems into combat operations. How do you see the Marine Corps employing unmanned ground vehicles in the Indo-Pacific over the next 1 to 2 years?
Well, ma'am, we've got a remote operational ground unit expeditionary, our Rogue Nemesis Navy Marine Expeditionary Ship Interdiction System, which fires an anti-ship missile off of a remote operated vehicle. That is our commitment. That's our primary mover of that Nemesis system. We're going to continue to expand that. We're going to continue to increase our magazine depth, and we're going to continue to look into all of the unmanned platforms. Because as an infantryman, I was taught never send a Marine where you can send a bullet. Exactly. And I am fully committed to autonomy up to the leading edge, both in drone technology and in vehicle technology.
Great. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Hovens, and then we're going to go to the Democratic side and take several of them in order. Thank you for giving us a chance.
My thanks as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to start with Secretary Cao. With the blockade that we have in the Middle East right now in the Strait of Hormuz, how do we continue to make that more effective? And in your opinion, how can we make that sufficiently effective so that we not only constrain Iran from moving any of their ships in and out of the Gulf, but that we open the Gulf for other shipping?
Senator, thank you for that question. You're right. I mean, doing a blockade is very tough, and I will turn over to the Chief of Naval Operations in a second for tactics, techniques, procedures while we do that. But, you know, there's a lot of things we can leverage, including, I think, unmanned surface platforms will be important, as well as maritime domain awareness. But I will turn over to the Chief of Naval Operations.
Well, where I'm going with, I mean, obviously the pressure on us is gasoline prices, right? And that's really the only lever that Iran has left. And that's to create enough uncertainty so that ships can't transit the strait. But if we take that away and we not only bottle them up, but we open up traffic, then the pressure's off us and the blockade pressure continues. Whatever kinetic steps we decide to take over and beyond that, we'll see what the administration decides. But that truly keeps the pressure on them, increasingly so, and it takes it away from us. So, you know, as their terrible regime says, oh, well, our people are used to suffering, you know, and so they think they can outlast us. So how do we flip that equation? That's what I'm getting at.
Well, sir, the blockade has probably been the single most important military operation we've done to try to get negotiations to the place where they even are.
And we're getting better at it. We're getting more efficient at it.
We are. That comes with really good rules of engagement. We're really good at understanding how to determine this. It comes from artificially intelligent enabled common operational picture to actually know who we go after, intel, deep intelligence, and then the ability to utilize security forces to board if necessary or disable if necessary leakers. So that's important. But to open the flow of commerce to partners who want to leave the Strait of Hormuz and where we know there have been mines in place, so that's challenging for them. If we go try to do escort with that, we have looked into that. That's a very challenging mission in that narrow strait when it's contested. And so when you're in a contested environment, to demine the Strait of Hormuz or to do escort duty is not something that's easy to do. So we're going to have to get to a place that that strait is open with a generally accepted ceasefire before that can be turned on en masse.
So are you saying you can't, it's not, in your opinion, you're not able to completely open the strait and maintain the blockade other than through some type of agreement, ceasefire?
I think
Militarily, can we do it? Are there things that you can continue to do to enhance your ability on that blockade and control the strait to mitigate the risk for ships to go through?
There are many things we can continue doing to enhance the blockade. But to actually start doing something where I'm providing escort services through a contested strait will, in my military opinion, exceed the capacity of the Navy to do that effectively.
Escorts, I understand, but every step you take that creates more opportunity for ships to flow, other than the ones we blockade, puts pressure on them and relieves pressure on us.
It does, and
Would you agree?
that goes down to servicing their mine layers. You know, we've shot a lot of them, and that takes a lot of intel and a lot of dynamic targeting to do that effectively, and we continue to do that. We have to continue our expeditionary UUV-enabled demining operations. So all those things come together to give us confidence that commercial shipping can transit that strait safely.
Yeah. General Smith, kind of the same question, but reverse. I was in Taiwan, I've been in Japan, South Korea fairly recently. Increasingly, China is creating a de facto blockade around Taiwan, just with live fire exercises, with, you know, their ship exercises, aircraft exercises, on and on and on. De facto, they're increasingly doing that. Other than making Taiwan a porcupine, what other steps are effective in slowing that down, preventing it, stopping it, addressing it?
Well, sir, your last point about a porcupine defense does work. Nobody wants to bite into a
So
porcupine.
back to what Senator Kennedy was talking about.
Yes, sir. You want to have a deep missile depth. You want to make it, it's one thing to start across the straits. It's another thing to get to the shore of Taiwan, and it's another thing to get from the shore to the capital. And so what we're doing is we are working closely with our allies and partners to ensure that every step of that possible action by the PRC is contested.
The Marines at Okinawa are doing incredible work, and you don't realize how amazing the work they're doing and what they're doing on land and sea. The whole drone thing is a huge, huge part of that and changing everything, air and water. It's unbelievable. Congratulations to your guys, and thanks to all three of you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to our colleagues.
Senator Coons, followed by Senator Durbin and Shaheen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will defer to my friend and colleague, Senator Durbin, and then to Senator Shaheen, and then I'll question.
Thank you, Senator Coons. For a number of us, this is the last time we'll meet in these circumstances. We've announced our retirement from the Senate. I wanted to take 60 seconds just to acknowledge how I got started in the Senate, because it involves the Marine Corps. It involves a man named Paul Douglas. Paul Douglas was the senator from Illinois from 1948 to 1966, college professor who enlisted in the Marine Corps in March of 1942. What was unique about that was he's the oldest recruit in the history of the Marine Corps. He went through basic training at Parris Island at the age of 50 and became a captain in rank and begged to be in combat. They eventually assigned him to Okinawa. He was involved in combat and lost the use of his left arm, which he referred to as his paperweight the rest of his life. Senator Douglas insisted on signing every letter that went out of his office, and that meant that somebody had to sit next to him and pull the letters as he signed them. Interns, and that was me, and that's where I started in this business. But I'm very proud of his service, and I wanted to make a record of it today in this testimony and hearing. Thank you for your service to this country. Secretary Cao, I think our greatest source of pride in Illinois is Great Lakes Naval Training Station. To think that every recruit in the United States Navy goes through Great Lakes is a great source of pride to us. I was there just last week as we dedicated the expansion of a school for the families that live in the area. Here's a challenge we face, which I want you to be sensitive to. Maybe you already are, is the fact that this Operation Midway Blitz, or whatever they call it, by DHS and ICE and the like, has scared the hell out of many people in that region, particularly a Hispanic population. Every week, we have literally thousands of graduates at a beautiful ceremony at Great Lakes who come in from all over the United States. My concern is their concern. Some of them are not citizens of the United States, and yet their sons and daughters are volunteering to serve in the Navy. We have more than 1,000 each year that become citizens, actually sworn into citizenship at that base. We have warned DHS, stay away from Great Lakes. Don't intimidate these families in any way. Give them a chance to have one of the greatest days of their lives with their sons and daughters. Are you familiar with this issue?
Senator, thank you for this question. And again, I share your concern of being a refugee to this country and serving this nation. I know what it's like to not have a country to call my own and having to, having the United States open up their arms. And that's why I served in combat for this country for so many years. What I know about the DHS and in Great Lakes is they're no longer on board Great Lakes at all.
That's what I understand too.
Yes, sir. So, but I'm not aware of Midnight Blitz or any other operation within DHS, sir.
I just want to sensitize you to the fact that thousands of families come to that base each week to celebrate one of the most important days of their families' lives. And many of them are in fear that just around the corner is someone who's going to ask them to show identification. We've got to keep that operation at Great Lakes separate from this Midway Blitz and ICE agents' assignment in order to maintain its integrity. So I hope you'll keep that in mind as you chart your conduct in the future.
I'll keep it in mind, Senator.
I yield. Chris. I yield.
Senator Sheen.
Well, thank you for giving us the opportunity to go ahead and ask questions ahead of you. We appreciate it. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. I'm sure you will not be surprised, Secretary Cao, to know that I have a question about the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. I'm sure Admiral Caudle was expecting that. But this is distressing because the shipyard has a funding shortfall of $65 million since October. $30 million of that is to cover Secretary Hegseth's directive to provide bonuses to randomly selected workers. So the idea of recognizing workers, I think we can all support. But if we're going to do that, then the department needs to provide the funding to make that recognition. And they didn't do that. So the shipyard had to take funds from their existing budget. In addition, DOD is pulling back another $33 million from the shipyard for its, quote, under execution of hiring, which doesn't make any sense because, as Admiral Caudle can speak to, because we've had this conversation, they were prevented from hiring workers before Congress stepped in and exempted them from Secretary Hegseth's civilian hiring freeze. It's an issue that I raised with the previous Navy Secretary, which he said he was trying to address. It's an issue I raised with Secretary Hegseth. He said you all were gonna look into it, and yet we still have this funding shortfall that is having a real impact on the ability of the shipyard to do their jobs at a time when it is critical that we keep the maintenance of our nuclear subs at the forefront and get those ships in and out on schedule. So, Acting Secretary Cao, can you commit that you will restore the funding that Portsmouth has lost because of the actions of the department?
Senator, thank you for that question. I share with you that the workers at Portsmouth are just amazing. And so we need to make sure that they're paid and given the bonuses they deserve. The Chief of Naval Operations and I were talking about this morning. We will delve into this and take this for record, and I'll personally bring it to your office to report back, ma'am.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And Admiral Caudle, as you know, Congress has appropriated significant funding to expand the Virginia-class submarine production capacity, and that's alongside of our commitment with Australia under AUKUS to increase the submarine industrial base. We have challenges producing the submarines that are part of the existing pipeline. So can you talk about how we're addressing the AUKUS piece of that and how the Navy is spending the investment that Australia is making in AUKUS?
Yes, ma'am. You know, the money that Australia has given us, the $2 billion, will become part of the generalized fund as part of the SIB investment. The submarine industrial base investment is a set of money that I know you know also all too well, goes to improving many facets of the way we do new construction. It goes to improving the tooling and capabilities there, bringing state-of-the-art robotics and artificial intelligence into drawings and workflows. It goes into recruiting and retaining and developing the best workforce possible. It goes into ensuring the compensation of those workers is at a level that we can drive these retention numbers the way they are. And we're responding to that. We're seeing that at all of our private yards. So it is paying off. You know, I like to say we've delivered 7 Virginia-class submarines in the last 4 years. And while we're not on plan, that's pretty close to, you know, where we need to get to. It's my estimate in the, you know, by 2030 to 2032 timeframe, we will be delivering exactly what we need, the 2.0 for us and the submarines necessary to actually make sure that we make good on AUKUS Pillar 1. So I think the investments are good. They're starting to pay off. We didn't get here overnight, and it's taken some time for us to actually get back up on step to where we need to be, but I really do believe we're getting there. And I think the leadership part of this, I'll finish, under our Director of Submarine Programs, which is dual-hatted under Vice Admiral Goucher as DERPM Submarines and Programs, and the PAE, it works for the Secretary, was a great step there to tighten up the chain of command there, to put the necessary heat and light on the actual shipyard to make sure that we're effectively spending those dollars.
So you feel confident that that's going to help us get the Virginia schedule up to where we want it to be?
I do. All the trends are positive. You know, it's not like getting the rudder over on a ship and it turns immediately on something like this, but everything I see and every report I see, from days of maintenance delay to recouping, you know, idle submarine that we're actually down to zero now, and the work you see going on at Portsmouth Naval Shipyard, and that's in the public yard sector, every one of those is actually in a positive trend and actually getting better. So I am quite confident in what I'm saying.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We passed for a while.
Thank you. And I appreciate the testimony we've heard so far, and I'm looking forward to reviewing all of your prepared statements. I am a huge proponent, as is Senator Collins and many of us, of unmanned systems. And I appreciate the answer from General Smith about your engagement. But I'd like to hear more about this from the Navy. You're proposing, I believe, $2.2 billion in investments for unmanned systems, and I'm concerned about whether or not we've learned the lessons from past drone initiatives that focused on procuring end items with little or no thought to how they'll actually be employed or sustained. If you could, Acting Secretary Cao and Admiral Caudle, how's the Navy thinking about the deployment and the use of systems in the future to make sure they're fit for the challenges we face, and how are you incorporating the lessons learned from Ukraine and the ongoing operations in Iran, as you just referenced, Admiral Caudle, the unmanned systems for demining, to make sure that these investments in autonomous systems meet our operational needs?
Thank you for that question, Senator. Again, as an EOD tech myself, I've used robots my entire career, where I'd rather send a robot down than send an EOD tech down there with a set of wire cutters. And, you know, likewise, while we're doing underwater demining, we use right now the Mark 18 UUV in order to do that. Pilots will say all the time that they use that unmanned systems for a long time with AIM-9 and AIM-120. So right now we're studying to make sure we're doing the right thing with, especially with MOSA, the open systems architecture. We want to be able for every system to talk to each other. Just like my iPhone should be able to talk to someone else's BlackBerry. You know, we want to be able that everything works together. We are taking lessons learned from Ukraine. The thing is, we have the tyranny of distance. Ukraine can just put it in their backyard and send it out, whereas we have to travel 10,000 miles or even greater if we're talking about Indo-PACOM in order to get the systems there. And I will turn over to the Chief of Naval Operations to tell you how we're integrating the systems, especially with the TR battle group. We're getting ready to go out and be the first carrier strike group to use unmanned systems.
Thank you. Admiral Caudle.
Hey, Senator Coons, sir, thank you for that. You know, first of all, let me just say the ultimate unmanned weapon is the SM-6, the Conventional Prompt Strike Missile, the heavyweight Mark 48 torpedo, LRASM. Those are unmanned vehicles themselves, and they're quite capable, and we need to make sure that our munitions, you know, are fully funded. So let me just state that. You know, the Secretary's got it right. It's, you know, it's one thing to be able to launch unmanned kit, which has limited range, when you're in an arc of achievability like Ukraine is to their target set. So we have to have
Let me, not to interrupt, but I'll interrupt. One of the things that's most impressed, and you've heard it from several of us, about Ukraine's work is that they are launching successful drone strikes 1,000 miles from Ukraine.
Yes.
Part of what has changed the momentum on the battlefield is their successful strikes in Moscow and the stunning success of Operation Spiderweb to deliver significant damage to strategic airlift 1,000 miles away. So it's not entirely true that they aren't covering also the tyranny of distance, given the depth that the Russians are using to launch attacks on Ukraine. So forgive me.
No question, sir, but I've got to carry that kit as a Navy to the forward part of the theater and then get that last 1,000 miles, okay? So I can do that through my own ships, so you can envision what motherships would look like.
Sure.
Certainly that would be our medium unmanned surface vehicle, containerized payloads with swarm drones in that, all types of long-range munitions in that, undersea capabilities in that. So containerization is huge for me to do that. I also, not only the distance, I have to have things survivable in sea state. Monsoon season is about to hit. So if I tried to go put a bunch of unmanned right now in this monsoon season, it would not be survivable in itself. So I love the asymmetry and the overmatch that you can get from robotic and autonomous systems. But as the Navy chief, I have to bring that forward in a way that I can launch that into the theater with valid targets that I can't service through other means.
Sir, what role do you imagine that our treaty allies play in this force projection? Because, you know, frankly, the Australians, the Philippines, Korea, Japan, they are technologically sophisticated partners. They are close partners with us, and they have the ability to support, to service, and to project. The first time I really was struck by what is possible in this was in Australia. I was there last summer for the U.S.-Australia AUKUS-related dialogue and visited an Anduril facility and saw their Ghost Shark product and was really quite struck at what they are deploying. What role do you see our close allies playing in developing, testing, and deploying autonomous systems?
Well, Ranking Member Coons, again, I don't see any world that our allies don't play a prominent role in how we leverage autonomy. I need their ABO. I need them to invest in it. I need to actually work with them and integrate it into the schemes of maneuver and how we do mass fires. So it's a vital question what you're bringing up. If we're going to launch and have effective unmanned capability going forward, then that has to be done, I think, in close collaboration with allies and partners. I need to be able to sustain that kit forward to be able to bring it to bear. That will require partnerships with our allies.
My last question this round, if I could. Look, as I understand our shipbuilding challenges, all of the existing shipyards are working at full capacity. You're asking for more money to increase their capacity, but we are literally years behind. And the best-in-class shipyards in the world are in Japan, South Korea, and China. 50 years ago, we had the best shipyards in the world. Today, we do not. And I'm a strong believer that we need to make sure we are protecting America's industrial base and exploring deeper partnerships. You ask for $1.8 billion to study using foreign shipyards and foreign designs. That is a lot for a study. If you could just briefly describe what the point is for that much of a study and what extra capacity you think we might look to our treaty allies to provide, both for servicing, to your point of tyranny of distance, and potentially constructing ships in partnership with us. I'm a big believer in the AUKUS partnership. I think we need to be looking to our close allies and partners as long as we are protecting our domestic shipyards and they have robust and sustained opportunities to contribute to this work.
Ranking Member Coons, that's a wonderful question, sir, because the RDT&E we were getting with that is to see the integration of those foreign ships, to see how they fit in our formation. And if it works, we're not buying into foreign shipyards. We're having them invest in the United States. We want them to bring their operations here with the way they're able to crank out a destroyer in 2 years. And that will create basically 540,000 jobs in the United States. And not just to build destroyers and frigates and battleships. We're talking about also merchant ships. Right now, we only have 188, flagged merchant ships and 105 military SEAL command ships, and we need more in the United States. The Chinese have 11,000 merchant ships, and we need to build capacity. That's why to be able to have them invest over here, I mean, my Toyota is not built in Japan, it's built in the United States. So have them build their factories over here, sir.
Hanwha's dramatic commitment to invest in the Philly shipyard is just one of many such investments. Is it your testimony then that you're not considering any production overseas, only investments in U.S. shipyards?
Well, obviously, initially, we would have to see how they build those ships over there, and then bring American workers over there, learn the way their modalities, how they work, and how they're able to streamline processes. Bring that over here in the United States, sir.
You've been asked before, but we've encouraged Taiwan to buy arms from us, and all of a sudden there's a pause. What are you hearing from the Taiwanese about the pause?
Chairman, I have not heard. I have not spoken to the Taiwanese. However, we have done some foreign military sales to them. It's just right now we're doing a pause in order to make sure we have the munitions we need for Epic Fury, which we have plenty, but we're just making sure we have everything. But then the foreign military sales will continue when the administration deems necessary, sir.
Put another way, do you expect the sale to be approved at some point?
Senator, that would be up to the Secretary of War and the Secretary of State, sir.
Yeah, well, that's what's really distressing. Belatedly, the administration seems to be mad at the Europeans for not engaging in the Middle East. But as a practical matter, without basing and sustainment from NATO allies, we wouldn't be able to project power in the Middle East. So what role should NATO play out in the Indo-Pacific?
Well, Chairman, first of all, NATO playing a role, I would love to see NATO doing some demining in the straits also. I mean, this is a mutually beneficial for all the world if we can clear the straits right now and really provide security. And NATO, again, would be a great ally to us in the Pacific just to maintain the sea lanes of communication. We, the United States, are a maritime nation. We depend on the Pacific and the Atlantic for free trade, and the world does also. And so this is why we need to all work together to protect the sea lanes of communications for the world, sir.
I think the way to think about NATO is it's important not only for the Europeans and ourselves, but for the rest of the world. They're looking at NATO, coming to NATO meetings from the Pacific. This is the potential framework for us to be the leader of the free world, all the world, not just Europe, because we all know who our adversaries are: China, Russia, North Korea, Iran. They all have one thing in common: they hate us. So we can either stand up to that or hunker down and hope for the best. Finally, Ms. Secretary, fiscal year 26, we funded naval drone and counter-drone capabilities via full-year appropriations. This year's request would only fund Navy drone programs in reconciliation. Do you have some view about that?
Oh, I'm sorry, is this CNO? I'm sorry, good. Would you like the CNO to answer that, Chairman, or myself?
Admiral?
Chairman McConnell, the risk of, not having the total discretionary and mandatory bill is significant for the Navy. We've in the opening statements that have been made by you and others, we take risk in munitions, we take risk in F-35, and we take risk in FISRAM to maintain our facilities, our foundry, as I like to call it. So, if the majority of the counter UAS and counter drone technologies and capabilities are in the mandatory and that's not funded, of course, I take risk there. And so that's why, for me as a service chief, the passing of the total bill is so vital for me.
What specific lessons has the Navy learned from what's going on in Ukraine? It's all been described as the Silicon Valley of warfare. I'm wondering if any of the senior Navy leaders have been to Ukraine and to gather lessons firsthand from the front lines of modern warfare.
Chairman McConnell, there's a lot of lessons. One, how you command and control forces. Two, how you have great intelligence apparatus, sustained ISR, and not only just ISR for targeting and getting valid targets that actually, cripple the supply and logistics and force correlation nodes of an adversary. But the
General Smith, thank you all for being here this morning. General Smith, over the last several years, this subcommittee has supported the Marine Corps' efforts to transform into a more mobile and capable force prepared to fight in a potential naval war in the Pacific. Can you describe the importance of the medium, landing ship to the Marine Corps' approach to fighting this war?
Senator, I can, and thank you for that question. The LSM, or landing ship medium, we always have to do landing ship comma medium in the Marine Corps. It's just the way we do it. It is an inter-island connector. It enables our forces to aggregate and disaggregate rapidly and to go to places that other conventional Navy ships cannot go because of beach gradients. So it allows us to have access to the totality of the first island chain, and it's vital. It's going to bring our medium missile batteries, our Nemesis, our Navy Marine ship interdiction system. It's going to bring all that to bear in places that otherwise the adversary would not have to calculate when they look at their ISR platform, when they look at where are they focusing their intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. Now they have to look at the totality of the map.
Thank you. The current requirement laid out by the Navy and Marine Corps is to procure 35 medium landing ships. How critical to the Marine Corps is it for the U.S. to build at least 35 of them?
Ma'am, it's vital because we're going to need to move the forces that need to be moved. Those forces in 3MEF, 3rd Marine Expeditionary Force.
As we can.
Absolutely, ma'am. There's a saying, if your neighbor says he's going to kill you, you should believe him.
Yeah.
You should believe him.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you. Secretary Cao, I am very concerned that the Navy's request for funding to procure 6 medium landing ships was included in the partisan and mandatory spending part of the department's budget request. That request is outside the jurisdiction of this subcommittee and is in serious danger, I think, of not passing this year. That makes me question the Navy's commitment to maintaining this program. So what is the Navy's backup plan for procuring medium landing ships if the administration's partisan spending request fails to advance?
Senator, I share your concerns that we need this whole $1.5 trillion. The Navy and Marine Corps have taken a lot of hits over 20 years in Iraq and Afghanistan, ma'am, and so that's why we need this one-time budget in order to fix all these things. However you appropriate to us, whether one bill or 2 bills, we're completely agnostic to that as a Navy and Marine Corps. We need that in order to build these medium landing ships. And again, Fincantieri is going to turn it out quickly, and I know that's why we're going with a design that's already proven, it's already built, and we're not going to deviate from that like we did with the previous models. That's why it's so imperative that we get the $1.5 trillion, especially for the Navy and Marine Corps, to get the $377.5 billion, ma'am.
Yeah, but, well, President Trump and this administration talk a lot about wanting to build more ships in America, and I absolutely agree with that. But bringing back our domestic shipbuilding into, so battle force ships.
Senator, again, we need, however we get this money, we need it all to fix the Navy and Marine Corps. And I know you weren't here for my opening statement, but my son's going to be commissioned in the United States Marine tomorrow from the United States Naval Academy. I cannot have him go to war the way I did. We just can't do this to our sailors and Marines. These are American sons and daughters, and we owe it to them to give them what they need. And this is why we just need to get this out. But when we're balancing the needs of quality of life, quality service, housing for them, pay and everything else, it's just the way the budget was laid out, ma'am.
Yeah, it's a problem that it's laid out that way, because the Navy and Marine Corps have both emphasized the importance of procuring the medium landing ships quickly. Do you support procuring them as quickly as our shipyards are able to build them?
Senator, I do support building them as quickly as possible and getting as many as we can possibly get.
Let me try again on the question I asked you earlier about which of the Navy leaders have been to Ukraine.
Sir, I can't tell you in total how many Navy leaders have been there. I have not been to Ukraine, but I do know that the Commander of Naval Forces Europe and Africa, which headquartered out of Naples, Italy, and Commander 6th Fleet have been there. And if they haven't been there exactly on boots on ground, they certainly have been to all the Black Sea states that surround it. And they work very closely every single day with the Ukrainian Navy and their entire joint force to support their needs to the extent the United States Navy can.
What about the civilian leadership?
Senator, I have not been to
We had to embarrass the administration in public to get them to actually spend it. We're going to have additional Ukraine money this year. I would say to the policymakers at the White House and the Pentagon, the American people are in favor of us helping Ukraine. Republicans are in favor of us helping Ukraine. Democrats are in favor of helping Ukraine. We're pretty together on this issue, so we're not going away. One final question. What are the specific objectives of U.S. strategy up in the Arctic? What role will Arctic allies like Denmark and Norway play in achieving them?
Sir, I can address some of that. You know, I'm a huge proponent of the Arctic. In my job at U.S. Police Forces, you know, as the NORTHCOM component commander, I think played a vital role with the NORTHCOM team to enhance our presence in the Arctic. We do that in partnership with the European Command and Indo-Pacific Command commander. I kind of break it down a couple ways. One, it's important to have presence there. You got to walk the battlefield. So that means operating above the Arctic Circle consistently with surface ships, with aircraft carriers, and of course our submarine force. Second, you have to have special capabilities to be successful up there. That means communication systems that can work at high latitudes. It means systems on board that can handle those temperatures. And it means understanding flows of marginal ice zone and the weather conditions up there. They're significant, and the climate is quite something. And the third thing, we know the Russians want to actually, you know, call it their own. They'd like a 9-dash line around the North Pole, and we're not going to let that happen. We know that China wants to call the Arctic a near, you know, Arctic nation state, and we're not going to let them operate up there without being contested either. And so it's very important, and this goes to what we're doing in Alaska and the recapitalization and the facilitization of some of the places we're working in with the senators from Alaska. This goes to collaboration with the Coast Guard and what we're doing to rebuild their ice-breaking fleet and how we sustain their operations. So the Arctic's extremely important. Trillions of dollars of minerals, natural gas, oil, and rare earths, and the United States has to have a presence there, sir.
Speaking of Denmark, after the suggestion that somehow we wanted to take Greenland, how are we getting along with the Denmark NATO member?
Sir, Denmark is a very close naval ally. We do a lot with Denmark. They punch way above their weight class, very sophisticated set of capabilities that they bring to bear, and I think our relationship with them is very close. They know that from a Navy perspective how important Greenland is key terrain and our ability to operate in and out of Greenland to protect the Atlantic GI-UK gap from out-of-area Russian deployers is extremely important. They know it's important from an early warning radar system to understand ICBM threats and other threats that could approach our homeland.
So whatever concern there may have been, you think is blown over?
Sir, I won't speak to the political aspects of that, but I can just tell you, Navy to Navy, we're strong with Denmark.
Senator Coons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your testimony today. I'm just going to pick up on a theme that you've heard from all of us, from the first questions from Senator Kennedy to the last questions from the chairman to that recent engagement. With our allies, we are strong. With our allies, we can project force. With our allies, we can deter China, Russia, Iran. To take service alongside us when we asked in Afghanistan was outstanding. And their sacrifice, as we come to our Memorial Day, we should not forget. 52 Danes died in service in Afghanistan. And as Senator Tillis and Senator Murkowski And Senator Durbin and I were there at the memorial to the Danes who served and died alongside us. We should not forget that when our president says we never asked NATO for anything and they never did anything for us, that's heard loud and clear by our NATO allies. I am gravely concerned that in the Arctic, where the Canadians are stepping up and investing, we're walking away from a decades-old partnership with them. In Europe, where Russia is the single greatest threat to our security and stability, we're putting at risk the trust that we've earned by abruptly announcing withdrawals of thousands of American troops in a way that is not clearly planned or executed. And the chairman referenced the $400 million. When the secretary was in front of us, he got asked by several of us, we appropriated $400 million last year for Ukraine. Has it been spent? No. When will we get a spend plan? Last week. Do we have it today? No. I know this is above your pay grade, but Mr. Secretary, I hope you will convey, as you've heard from many of us, from the first questions from the chairman to my last question now, you're submitting a budget that puts things across the line from base budget to reconciliation, munitions, shipbuilding, the LSM that is essential to your ability to fight and win in the Western Pacific. If the reconciliation piece of this doesn't go through, we are going to have even bigger problems this year than last. So let me just briefly ask about those two things. Commandant, how important is it that you have the LSMs in the year ahead, and what will you do if that does not come through in reconciliation? How will that impact your warfighting capability?
Well, we'll be less mobile.
Is denied, and you don't get those munitions, is denied, and you don't get those munitions. And what does that do to shipbuilding, drones, and munitions for this coming year?
Sir, that's why it's so important. You know, the way I put it into a context, my base budget is about $270 billion. About a tenth of that, 1/10, is in my mandatory. You know, so, you know, the way it kind of looks across the entire budget, it's like a third is over in mandatory. But for me, the Navy, a tenth of my budget is there. A lion's share is in discretionary. So, but I need both, to your point. I need both. And so to the specifics of the risk, as I stated earlier, it is an F-35 procurement. It is an LSM, no question. That's where all 6 live. And the risk of munitions and the risk in the FISRM, we need to sustain our bases and our infrastructure.
So the reason I mentioned this in my opening, I'm mentioning it now, is that last year, the lack of coordination produced billions of dollars in what we call broken glass, problems that we had to fix because they were not fixed by the White House. And I recognize it's the White House, OMB, the Secretary's office that are making these decisions. But you've now heard from a whole series of senators, Republican and Democrat, that we've got clear priorities that we are at risk of not meeting. I also mentioned in my opening, I am really struggling, Mr. Secretary, with the Navy's headlong rush towards a Trump-class battleship. We have never previously named a class of ships for a currently serving president. In your opening, you referenced the Great White Fleet of 100 years ago, which helped project naval power for the United States. But I don't see how a new class of battleship at a cost of $50 billion over 5 years meets our operational needs at a time when most of our exchanges have been about how the lessons learned of Ukraine and the likely lessons being learned by the PR.
Combatant, in order to put those systems in there, to have 200 VLSLs, to have conventional prompt strike, as well as the speed necessary to get from point A to point B. That's why we're looking at the nuclear power for that. I mean, look at the Ford. She was able to go from Venezuela to the Mediterranean in 5 days. That's what we need right now, to be able to bring an arsenal out there quickly with a lot of firepower and launch missiles and return back, sir.
If we look at just, look, in 1988 in Popular Mechanics, that might have been an interesting proposal. If we just look back at the abrupt canceling of the frigates, if we look back at the LCS and what's happened, we have a profound mismatch between ship design, shipbuilding capability, and our capacity to deploy ships at scale. I am profoundly concerned that this is a $50 billion boondoggle where the delivery timeline is a political timeline, not a practical timeline. and where the clear lessons of Ukraine and the clear threats facing Taiwan are not being well served by that investment. You've been asked by Republicans and Democrats, should we sell to Taiwan the weapons that have already been promised? I say yes. And you've been asked by senators, both Republican and Democrat, are we learning the lessons of Ukraine? And to show that we do, we should prioritize drones over massive battleships. My view is that Ukraine today is on the front lines of freedom, and we need to act like it. I carry this in my pocket every day. It was handed to me a month ago in Odessa by a Navy chaplain from Ukraine. We've got more lessons to learn from them than we have learned, and this budget doesn't, in my view, reflect that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The subcommittee meeting is adjourned.